All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of Startup Fuckups. Today I have a good friend of mine, Pauline, who runs the company WooSender. Paul and I actually go way back, and it's very interesting how we ended up meeting. I think Paul, you reached out to me on LinkedIn, sent me a message and say, "Hey, let's go grab dinner." Sounded
Was
like
it dinner?
yeah, I think so. I think it was dinner. It sounded like a random person approaching me for a dinner date. But yeah, I appreciate you taking the time to build your network that way. And I'm curious, like before we even dive into the episode itself, is that how you still continue to build your network, or do you not do
No,
that anymore?
no more. Gone are the days. I used to do that to meet new people, meet agency owners. But then I think the time has passed. I value my time more now.
Mhm.
But maybe I will try that next time.
No surprise, no surprise. I'm sure you're kept very busy by the three different businesses that you run. I know you have your main marketing company, you have your passive cool call, and now you have your main business, WooSender itself. So maybe I'll let you introduce yourself. Tell us all about who you are, what is WooSender, and kind of how did you end up where you're doing what you're doing today.
Awesome. So, hey guys, my name is Paul, and I started my marketing agency back then in 2010 after I migrated here to Canada. I can't find a job, so I was like, I need to do something right with my life. And so while I'm looking for a job, I started, looking around in the internet, and I found, a marketing course that, allows me to work from home. The gimmicks. And yep, I bought that course, and that's how I got started with the marketing. And then the good news is, after a few months of doing that, I finally got a job doing marketing, which is very interesting. And my boss gave me, like a $5,000 budget to do more internet marketing. At that moment, most of his clients, he got it from Yellow Pages. So I
Mhm.
was like, man, there's a lot of things can be done. And during that first 3 months, I literally learned as I go. I Google like the blogs and stuff like that to learn how to do marketing. And within 3 months, I tripled his sales using digital marketing, using Google back then. And he was really impressed. That's how I realized that, hey, if I can help my boss, I can do the same for my clients. That's how I get all, that's how I get started with, looking for my clients, reaching out by email, cold calling. And yeah, this is where I'm today. So after 10 years now, I've been doing digital marketing. I decided to, venture into a software niche where I provide software as a service. It seems to be a better business model than before, rather than me being a consultant trying to learn and improve myself on a daily basis. But having a SaaS business, you're allowed to focus more on the product rather than trying to keep yourself up to date with the latest, strategies and stuff like that.
Mhm. Cool. Tell us more about the product itself.
So yeah, WooSender was created back in 3 years ago with a business partner of mine in the US. His name is Steve. So we have this problem when we do marketing for people. We realize that, despite spending all the money and getting all those leads, my clients actually never really call them. They just receive those emails. If they have a system in place, it works really well. But most of my clients are self-employed. They only call back the call one time. They call back the clients just one time, and if the client didn't pick up, he will say, "Oh, the lead's not good enough." So he would text the client once. If there's no response, he move on, and he would blame it on us that we are not generating enough volume or we are generating quality leads. So those 80% of the leads that we generated technically gone to waste. They just throw it away because they don't call them 3 times or they don't email them, they don't follow up with them. So we
Mhm.
decided to create this software that allows you to automate the follow-up. So this way, anyone who uses our system, all they need to do is load the leads into our system, and our system will automatically follow up on behalf for them for the next 3 to 5 days without them lifting a finger.
Mhm.
That's how we decided to, you know what, I think this is a really good business idea. So maybe a business partner up and start creating that software. So today, WooSender is basically an AI automation follow-up system. The goal of WooSender is to combine all your communication into one single dashboard. So you don't need email, you don't need WhatsApp, you don't need Facebook Messenger. You don't need SMS. You don't need a separate phone number. By using our tool, everything is in one place. So all the communication is transparent. You can see everything in one place. You can set up all the automation, and the AI that we develop allows you to book a call with a client without you getting involved or doing anything at all.
Mm-hmm. And out of curiosity, and probably more for the listeners who are not familiar with a good follow-up process, where would you kind of draw the line or kind of distinguish between persistent follow-up versus being tenacious enough, but not being like too pushy?
There's many best practices out there. There's no right and wrong answer. The goal is to follow up because you already paid for those marketing effort. Like, for example, if you hire me, you pay for my fees and the marketing budget to generate leads through, let's say, Facebook ads or Google ads. Or maybe you do a billboard, or maybe your clients come to your website through organic search on Google and then fill out a form. That's where the sales actually starts. You don't actually make money until you close the deal. And that's where a lot of people lack off. They only call once. They don't have a system in place to call them again. So there's exactly, there's only no right and wrong answer, but you want to be persistent enough so that you don't waste that leads and don't piss them off. But at the same time, you want to be aggressive enough such that, you make sure you try your best to get them to talk to you on the phone. So what we do right now is we have a 5-day sequence where we follow up with them every single day just for 5 days. And then after that, it stops. And we will also leave a voicemail like 3 times in 5 days. That's it. So we will text them, we will email them, we will leave a voicemail. And if they don't respond, we will then move forward and not bothering, following up with them, because they might not be a good fit or they just do not want to talk to somebody. But just by doing that 5-day sequence, the number of conversation that we can help get our clients increased by 3x. So that means if you have 10 people inquire for your roofing services and you usually only get, let's say, 1 conversation out of it, right now, by just doing that 5-day sequence, you get 3 more conversations just like that with the same amount of money spent. So it's really, really powerful. And, most people doesn't realize that big companies has really good system in place to, they have a sales team that calls you again and again and again until you pick up the phone. You might not be happy, but out of 100 calls they make, they get 10 new customers.
Yeah. I think the numbers basically put the proof in the pudding. But to add my 2 cents as well, I think a good follow-up, which you probably are already doing, but maybe it's not something that you're actively conscious about, is that when you follow up, you're not just saying like, hey, how come you haven't answered my call kind of thing. You're actually saying like, hey, I'm not sure if you missed my call, or hey, not sure if a phone call is the right way to reach you. I'm going to send you an email. So trying different ways and phrasing it in different ways. That way you don't end up becoming pushy. And you're able to give the client the benefit of doubt that they are actually missing your call because maybe there was something out, that they were busy with. And I think sometimes just the sheer following up, even if it's the same message again, works very well as well. Because I'll give my personal example. I'm recently had to look for a cleaner for my old building because my tenant is moving out. So obviously what I would do is I would reach out to a whole bunch of different cleaners to get quotes. And then I'm noticing that some of them, they never follow up. Some of them, they follow up a few times. And the ones that follow up a few times stay top of mind. Because as I'm shopping around for quotes, as I haven't made my decision yet, the ones that I tend to remember are naturally the ones who have followed up a few times. So that helps me shortlist them as well. So for what it's worth.
Yep. A follow-up is always better than no follow-up. So that's 100% correct.
Cool.
And so then from there, you just have to optimize your message in a way that you can get them to see your value. And then the goal is to get them to talk to you. That's it. We don't have to write a whole 100 or 1,000 words paragraph, on an email. The goal is just to get them to jump to a call with you. And then from there, you can do what you do best, which is closing them.
Yeah. So I'm curious to hear, especially for today's episode, since the topic is software development fuck-ups. As someone who started with zero marketing experience going into building a marketing company, now you have zero software experience going into building a SaaS solution. How did you go about figuring out where to get started when it comes to building a SaaS solution?
Back then, I just do it. I never think a lot. I just get started. Whatever savings that I have, I just go all in. But I realized that it's really a big mistake. What I learned right now is that you want to start with the minimum viable product. What's the fastest way you can get your product out there so that you can start selling it? That's I think the number one most important lesson that I learned from there. So it's hard. Like, there's so many things that I learned from the internet. There's a lot of information out there. I guess it's just more on you spending time finding the right information to learn from the right website, from the right consultant, from the right person. Another thing that I found out is easier is to actually talk to someone, talk to an actual software consultant. See, pay them whatever rate they're asking for, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. The amount of information you can get out of that 100, 200, it's so good that it saves you, $1,000 worth of mistakes down the road. Because they have been doing software. For example, like if I knew earlier, I would talk to a developer early before I even started doing anything so that I can get the context right. For example, what language would the software be? What type of server I should host it? What type of developers I need? What type of backend language I need or code I need? Is it MySQL? Is it like MongoDB? All those terms. From there.
Sorry to quickly cut you off. Can you give a bit more context? Like, did you build it yourself? Did you hire a developer? Did you work with an outsourced company? Did you work with an agency?
I actually hired someone from Upwork that are based in initially my first developers in India. And then I found out they're not a good fit. Then I find someone in Vietnam and I realized they are a really good company. That's how everything got started. It all starts from there. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Sorry, you were saying?
Yeah. So basically what I did was I just get started, just do it mentality, make a lot of mistakes along the way. That's how I started CoolCall, which is the call tracking company software that I use. And then with WooSender, it's a little bit different. It's much more efficient. I know exactly what I'm going after. I already have a team in place that build CoolCall that can be used to build WooSender. So a lot of the mistakes made on CoolCall that I used to think it's I wasted so much money on that project turned out to be a really beneficial learning experience for WooSender. So, yep, that's how I get started. Just dive in right there.
Yeah. Question for you. So you mentioned the minimum viable product, and often what I find a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with is when I talk to them about prototyping, when I talk to them about this minimum viable product, it is hard for them to condense like their entire vision of what the end software or app or whatever it is going to do into this prototype. What have you found, or at least what have you learned about what makes a minimum viable product?
To me, a minimum viable product is a product that can start making you money. That's my definition. I know there's a lot of terms out there, like what's the minimum product features you need to start selling. But to me, it's not about starting to sell. It's more like, what's the minimum amount of feature you need to start making money? Not necessarily selling it, but what is the minimum? Like for call tracking CoolCall that I created, the minimum viable product is to be able to buy a phone number and then start tracking calls. That's it. That's the minimum. Because I know with that, I can start selling already. With WooSender, it's a bit more complex. So we need a dashboard with all the conversation in place. But the key here is as long as the platform is able to send and receive text messages, send and receive emails, able to make a phone call directly from the platform, that's the minimum viable product. The AI stuff, the pipeline, the call recordings or the automation, those are not the minimum. Those are the second phase, I would say. So the first phase is if I have that basic done, I can start selling.
Yeah.
And start making money.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I've seen a lot of interesting MVPs, so to speak. I would even say that your minimum viable product doesn't even need to be tech necessary. It could even be like, let's say, for example, if you're trying to test a product that you have no idea if there's appeal for it, the ad that you put out, the Facebook ad or the Google ad, and then that leading to a landing page, that itself could be a minimum viable product. Or it could even just be like a video or a Kickstarter campaign. So it doesn't necessarily have to be software driven. I think
Yes,
to speak to your note, where it is something that can actually make profit. What I've seen there on the profit side of things is a good minimum viable product is something that gives the customer the end experience. So on the customer side of things, they feel like the product is complete, or at least it's complete for what they need it to do. There may be additional bells and whistles that you can throw in later on, like maybe you can throw in like automation, dashboard, that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they get the kind of quote unquote full experience, even if everything is happening manually on your backend. So the experience side, it mimics the true experience of your product, then that's a good MVP. And then the other one is it's something that will actually teach you something. If you're putting up a product with too many features, sometimes the struggle that you have probably seen, Paul, is that it's hard to learn what is going wrong or what people aren't using if there are too many things included. The less you have, the more you can learn. And I usually find like that's a very good starting point for just to test, to see what customers react to, what do they want to use, what do they like. Yeah.
Yes. Like everything can be done using the MVP method, like marketing, just an ad and a landing page. You can get it up and running. For example, you want to validate your business idea. You don't even need to create a product. You just, like you said, do a good video marketing on Kickstarter to validate the number of people who are interested in your product. And then that from there, it's an MVP by itself, but it's just not the product itself. It's just more on the idea itself is an MVP. Then when you validate your idea, then you create an MVP product. So yeah, I think it's really, really powerful in my opinion. That's what I did for Woostender. I realized a lot of mistakes. I have a friend that also started a business here doing food delivery. It's the same thing. He learns from that, and now it becomes even more interesting that everything he do right now, whenever you want to start a business, he start with an MVP. So instead of you creating renting a big place for your restaurant and then getting all the chef in place and a commercial kitchen in place, the MVP can be a food truck, right? You start with that one, just get a truck, and then you yourself can be a cook and start selling. See what's the experience looks like, what's the feedback looks like, and if a lot of people love your food, like what Japadok did, they can now venture into an actual store or an actual sit-in restaurant, and they already have all the branding and all the people in place to jumpstart. So a lot of people thinking, I want to start a restaurant. Let's just open up and rent a place. I'm good in cooking, and and you think that it's going to be easy, but a lot of times you can make it an MVP and start with a food truck, or maybe do a ghost kitchen, right? You don't need a lot of capital to start, and then from there you learn the trade, you improve your process, and then now you can go for a high capital type of businesses.
Maybe tell us, especially for those that are not familiar with the software development process, how did you go about like speaking to that first developer? Did you just say like, hey, I want these features, this is what I want it to do? Or did you have to kind of design the UX or user experience flow in terms of like, oh, people first sign in with a login page and then they click here and then they do this? Like what was the kind of process in terms of getting the developer to understand what needed to be built?
So the first step is actually not to talk to a developer. The first step is to create a design mockup. That's the most important one. Usually how it works is the founder or you yourself would then create how you want your app to do, what what you want your app to do and how you want your app to look like.
Mm.
From there, your first person that you want to get to it, it's a designer. So you can hire a UX designer, UX UI designer from, Upwork.com, or maybe locally here in Vancouver, anywhere, maybe your friends, just to help you that create this initial mockup with decent colors. There's a tips right there. There's a lot of templates out there that already has great design, that all you need to do is just to pay, $30, $40, and then you can download the entire template. And then instead of having a UX UI designer create everything from scratch, which costs a lot of time and money, you then get them to just modify, and you work with them, in person, ideally. If not, make sure you have enough guidelines to tell them, this is how I want it to look like. I want this page. I want a login page. I want this to look like this software. I want this to look like this company here or this website there. And then once you have everything in place, you finalize everything, only then you bring it to your developer. Because the developer, what I realize is it's really hard for them to visualize what you want. Sure, you can tell them, I want this feature, I want that feature, or I want the software to look like this company, but they don't really understand your vision. So by you giving them the design, they'll be able to look at it and say, oh, okay, this is what you actually want. And then they'll be able to tell you that if they can do it or they cannot. They will be able to consult you on, what other language they would use. Is it Node.js? Is it JavaScript? Stuff like that.
Yep.
And then from there, that's where you get technicals. Those technical part is not important. Most important is the visual, because all we care as a founder is that we want the end product. We don't care, what the code is or how long does it take. We just want to know the cost. I think that's the most important thing. And then can you get it done fast enough with this end goal in mind?
Cool. And to address some of the jargon, in case people are not familiar with what UX is and UI is, UX stands for user experience. That's kind of like Paul mentioned, like, if you click this button, where does it go? When you sign in, what page do you see? Where are the buttons? That all falls under UX. UI is more about the user interface. So that's more of the visuals, the color, the design itself, like how do things look, what font, those kind of things. Cool. So you mentioned you had a mistake with hiring the freelancer in India, and then you switched to an agent, like a company in Vietnam. What have you learned about mistakes what have you learned about hiring the wrong developers? Like how do you figure out if a developer that you're interviewing is a good fit, like if they have the right skills?
So unfortunately, you won't be able to know, unless you're coming from a developer background, you won't be able to know if they are a good fit in terms of skills wise, right? So I met this company on Upwork. They have a 5-star review as a company. So I know that I'm not making any mistakes right there. And they sort of the cheapest, which I think that's one of the biggest mistakes to look at price. Their sales team was awesome, which is also another problem, because often not the sales team do a good job in getting me to be a customer, but the person who developed is being assigned by the management, that doesn't have any experience, and all he cares is just to get it done without considering the future, or maybe consulting with you because you do not know anything about the coding part of it. So what I actually learned is that the easiest way is to, hire someone, a consultant or an individual rather than an agency. That's what the first lesson that I learned. You want to start hiring a person rather than an agency, because an agency there is to make profit. If you do not know anything, that's where it becomes really dangerous. So that's number one. Number two, you can actually hire a consultant to help you go through the code that you can pay, maybe slightly more, maybe $50, $60 an hour, or maybe $100 an hour. I know it's going to be expensive, but 1 or 2 or 3 hours by just hiring them, you're able to save thousands of dollars, because every time when a certain milestone, when you do a software is achieved, you want to get someone 1-2 hours just to review the code, just to give you some feedback, rather than you go blind and then you realize at the end of it, you develop a completely a complete product that is completely waste. So that's what I learned. The second thing is to always hire a consultant, to just review the code. The third, obviously, is cost. Now, I know cost is really important. That's what I choose for. I think now the good news is today, cost is no longer relevant as much as possible. Back then, everything had to be built from scratch. Today, there's a lot of drag and drop app software that you can use to build your app. So you don't need a lot of technical experience. You don't need a lot of coding. It's literally drag and drop like Flutter Flow. You can build your mobile app by just drag and drop. It's not beautiful, but you can always get someone to make it looks great. But you get my point. Gone are the days where you need someone to sit down and write the code for an entire month just to give you the function that you need. Today, it's all just can be done with drag and drop. That can be done in a week. There's a lot of companies right now out there that focus on helping you get the MVP product out. It can be mobile app, it can be web app, and it can be done literally within 2 weeks, depending on the functionality, of course. But yeah, 2 weeks. Just like website back then, right? Remember when you want to create a website back in the year 2006, everything has to be coded. Web developer was getting paid so well, and then WordPress came along. So WordPress allowed anyone to create their own page and their own teams, and then it becomes easier. Now it's even easier. Today is drag and drop, like Unbounce. You don't even need any coding skills anymore. And as of today, you have a lot of AI where you can just tell the AI, hey, I'm a roofing company. I need a website that do this, and then you just one click, it generate the entire website for you without you doing anything. That's how advanced the current market is. Same goes with software. Software, a lot of functions has already pre-developed. For example, just to give you an example, most software requires someone or the user to log in. And a lot of this software out there has already pre-created the login function for you. You don't even need to code it anymore. So that's how powerful it is. Instead of you, initially back then, we spent like a week to just create a login page and making sure all the data of the username and password is collected, making sure there's a validation process in place, and that take 1 week or 2 weeks, right? Right now, you just drag and drop the module, and that part is done. You only need to develop things that are not standardized. For example, your billing page might not be standardized, but they have a basic billing functionality that you can charge your client. You just have to tell them how much you want to charge, how often. The login page, every app need a login page. So that is standardized. That can be drag and drop. It's done. If you need a reporting page, depending on the data that you provide, reporting module can automatically generate that for you. You don't need to custom code to produce a certain chart or graph that you need.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's really powerful. So that's the thing here. Is the good thing is that with nowadays the cost is getting cheaper and cheaper. Developers are getting more commoditized, and there's a lot more talent right nowadays. It used to be India and Pakistan to be like the outsourcing world for development, but now everything can be done in Southeast Asia, like Vietnam. Vietnam is really, really cheap at this moment, and the quality of developers are, I will not say top notch, but one of the best. The only issue here is language barrier, but if you take your time, you take your patience, I guess that's the price you pay for getting a good and cheap developers, but that's worth it just to get the MVP started.
Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about the sort of the price of not getting it right? Like what kind of software that did you end up acquiring? Or so for those not familiar with software, that the idea is basically if you don't do your coding right the first time around, same with anything in your business, if you don't do your legal right, then things will come back to bite your ass in the future, because eventually you will accumulate a certain level of debt and you will have to start to address that because that fire starts to burn a bit more. So can you kind of talk about like what are some of the things that start to break down, or the issues that happen as you scale because you didn't do it right at the start?
So right now, okay, let's just start with the call tracking software that we started. So initially it was designed, and patched quickly and the most cost-effective way just to get the project started, right? And then, a lot of things we do not consider, like the database type or the certain features that was not considered upfront, such that whenever you develop a new feature, they have to rewrite the whole thing again in order to add that feature. So for example, you want to collect more data, instead of just adding a new column, but you have to rebuild the whole column from scratch. And that, I think, is the biggest mistake that I make by not, having someone to review those code. So there's a lot of that. Like for example, database. Right now with WooSender, we reach a point where we have like 6 million messages a month of data storage. So initially we used this platform called MongoDB. Now MongoDB, it's a database software that helps you store your data and manage your data. So as we grow to 6 million, 10 million messages per month, that database becomes not feasible, because it's how it was built in a way that if someone using your app is searching for a name in that 10,000 leads that they have, it's going to slow down the entire server just because everyone is sharing that same database. So if we have known earlier, we would have each account created through our platform would have its own database. But again, we don't know what we don't know until we reach this point. And the good news is it works. It works before, it just doesn't work now. It's fine. So with that said, it's very important to also realize that you can't plan too far ahead. You have to do what that doesn't scale in order just to make the money and then grow. Because sometimes if you think too far ahead, you are creating something that you're not going to use for the next 2-3 years. It's also not feasible cost-wise or time-wise. But yeah, it's very important to get the structure right. That's what we realized. The architecture of the platform, of the software, has to be done correctly so that the debt that you're going to pay down the road is not going to be too expensive. Yeah. Like, just to give you an example, right now with WooSender, we have to create everything from scratch, from ground up. And we call it the WooSender 2.0. The reason why we have to do that, it's because the code was built initially as a one big giant code. So just one code where all developers work on that code. So whenever we want to develop new feature, all the 10 developers have to talk to each other to make sure nothing gets fucked up. The person A is working on this code, doesn't want to affect the person B working on other code. So every time when we deploy a new feature, all 10 of them have to grow up together and say, oh, this is what I work on, and we cannot deploy as we go. Now, big companies doesn't have this problem, like Facebook, Twitter. They break down the code into 10,000 pieces or 5,000 pieces or 100 pieces. So if the person works on that one piece, we only fucked up that one piece. So, and then he can deploy that one piece anytime without affecting the rest of the 99 codes. So that's what we are progressing towards. But if we have known, we will probably break down by module. For example, the conversation features, one module, the database, one module, the billing, one module. So if someone is working on a billing, he can do whatever he wants on the billing. It doesn't going to affect the login page or the conversation or the automation. But right now, everything is one. And therefore, if one goes down, everything goes down.
Ouch. That really reminds me of I don't know how true this is, but like I'm on a Windows computer myself, and every time the Windows update comes around, like my entire computer slows down. And I think it's because it was structured in such a way where if you look at how your cell phones update nowadays, like the Androids or even the iPhones, they are a lot more modular, so that when certain parts are updated, it doesn't affect the entire OS. But for Windows, like when you update, the entire OS pretty much gets hogged down to deal with the update.
Yeah. That's true.
So I'm curious to hear, like you say that the cost of finding developers is coming down, but at the same time, like when you start to build something, you need to plan for a lot of this unforeseen circumstances. So you're usually focusing on like, okay, what is the immediate thing that I can build right now at the lowest cost that may or may not scale? How do you kind of balance deciding like, when should I save money versus when should I spend a little bit more money because I know that, or how do I know if I spend more money, will it actually benefit me more in the long run?
That is why, yeah. So that's a great question. So that's why I recommend it's always best to hire a consultant because you don't know what you don't know, right? By having a consultant consult with you, $100 an hour, it's actually not a lot. The amount of information you can ask within that hour, it's a lot. Like right now, this podcast would be what, 30 minutes now? There's a lot of information can be consumed in that hour to allow you to make the decision whether it makes sense for you at that time.
Yeah.
So for example, if someone came to me and say, hey, you need to structure it this way, make it modular when you start working on a software. If I have known, I could have asked for the cost. Like if we were to do it this way, would it be more expensive? And if they come to me and say, hey, oh, it's not going to take too much time. We just have to code it in such a way that it's different module and it's going to take the same time anyway. Yeah. Then I would have approached that differently rather than finding out now. You get what I mean? So the consultation itself, I highly recommend if anyone is doing a software, do not save that money. The amount of information you learn from can help you, streamline your process and, avoid a lot of the loopholes or the mistakes that you may make. Or even though it's a mistake, that's fine. At least you know that it's going to come. You can plan ahead rather than you getting surprised by the decision you make a few months ago and you realize you can't pivot anymore because it's too late. So yeah, that's one of the way to avoid it, or just talk to someone in that industry who is a founder, who have developed a software. It doesn't have to be a huge $1 million company. It can be someone who's just 10 steps ahead of you and just invite them for coffee or, just pay them by the hour and see what they would recommend.
Yeah. Related to that note, what are your thoughts on finding like a technical co-founder or a CTO?
I think that's actually the question I asked you back then when I was looking for a solution. But my answer today is I don't think it's important to hire technical co-founder. If you don't have one, I don't think we should rush it. Or we should, yes, you should actively seeking for one. But in reality is that the probability of you finding the right fit and the right co-founder who has technical skills is rare. So I would rather recommend that you focus more on the MVP, getting the design, UX, UI done, and then think what's the best way you can develop the software without all those features to start making you money and helping you sell the product without waiting.
Yeah.
And then, pay someone from Southeast Asia, $20 an hour to start creating that software. It's going to be a little bit costly. I get it. But, we a lot of times when I talk to other people, they're just waiting for the right co-founder to get started. If they don't find them, they don't start. And then you ended up getting nowhere. So yeah, instead of waiting for the right co-founder, which is rare, I found out it's really hard to find the right one just because the good one are all taken away. Or the good one already starting working on their project, they don't need you because they think they can do everything. I mean, that's what most founders try to do, everything themselves. So you're coming in a perspective where you have to convince them with your capabilities, your marketing skills, your strategy, or whatever background you're coming from to get them to come in and join you on this quest. It's really hard. It's like finding a wife. You get what I mean? It's not easy. Someone have to commit with you for the next 2 years, creating a software, and they spend all those time because initially how it works is that if you are not a technical developer, chances are you don't really get involved much in the initial process. You probably thinking what's your MVP, you get design done, but the developer will be the one that spend a lot of time creating that for you. And when that is created, they have wasted, let's just say, 6 months of their time, hoping that they will get paid now by you taking it off the ground and doing the marketing and trying to get the sale. And, so he's scared of you not able to do that. And now he wasted 6 months of his time. And you're scared of him because it's too costly and then you aren't able to sell. And now everything falls apart. So I recommend, do it yourself. get someone that you can hire with the proper milestone, get it done. And then while in the meantime, you can search for technical co-founder and get your project started, outsource to overseas. I know there's a lot of people saying, why should you outsource? Should create job in the local industry. But I think the goal here is first make your money. From there, you can always bring everything in-house. You can create more jobs, more career. But if you don't be successful, then whatever you want to do doesn't get realized, and you are the one that suffer. So initially outsource, get the right developer, one guy to code everything from scratch. You're going to cost a couple of $1,000s or more, but that's the cost of starting a company anyway. It's better than spending, 100 grand or 25 grand in university. That 25 grand, you're able to create a fully functional software that you can start selling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that. I totally agree on that. And I find that oftentimes when people look for that CTO, they don't really understand what a CTO's role is. Because when they're looking for a tech person, sometimes they really just need a developer to build something. And a good CTO is really someone who is able to not only build the product, but also have that insight on like the architecture, be able to plan ahead and think about those problems that you talk about. Really, it's that sitting in that consultation kind of role that you talked about, that tech expert who can say like, oh, you know what, if you build a MongoDB, these are the problems that will happen if you put all of your users on the same database, right? So having them have more of that strategic level thinking is one thing, and not every developer has that kind of mentality. Some of them are really good at coding, but they don't really think about the infrastructure. And then on the other side of things as well is like you say, it's so difficult to find a good developer, and it's much easier just to get stuff off the ground first, and then you can promote later. Like maybe if the developer that you hire right now is someone who you find is a good fit and is able to think ahead and be a bit more strategic, then you can always promote them later on to become a CTO as well.
Yep. That's one of the that's what we do actually. So we actually don't have a CTO. I kind of am a CTO because when I created the Call, the first software that I created, which it didn't go well. Right now it's just sitting down there, have a couple of clients here and there, but that's it. That was what I learned, and that helps me create the WooCenter, which is the second software company. But technically, I only run the operation based on what I know. I trust the team that I hired in Vietnam to do everything, and the good news is they are doing a great job. Thank God, But yeah, I think there's a cost to everything. So the cost of not getting started, the cost of finding a technical developer. Right now, we finally hired our own CTO, where they have with 15 years of experience helping startups, maintain, develop, scale their software, and that actually takes us like almost 6 months to find the right guy. And then the second guy that we're going to bring in-house, it's also a guy that we have been headhunting for a long, long time. Thank God through connection, we know that the CTO's friend's friend, who they worked together 6 years back, who he trusted, and he know that he's a really good coder. He recommend him to us, and through connection, we're able to bring him in to our company. So yeah, actively seeking is good, but don't let that be the roadblock for you to create the next software. Get started, plan out the cost, how much you can invest in the software. And then, once you have the visual done, it's really easy for developers to tell you, okay, this is going to take 6 weeks and it's going to cost you this much. Sure, it might be a little bit more or a little bit less, but with a proper visual guideline that you created the entire design, it can be done. You know exactly your pricing is, and then you know how much you need to invest. So rather than you hire someone by the hour and not sure what the timeline is, but if you give them a proper scope with all the design that you already did, they will be able to give you a right pricing and usually 90-80% correct when it comes to cost.
Yeah, cool. So where is WooCenter now in terms of the business, in terms of like how many customers do you have, revenue, like what's next on the roadmap? Are you raising capital? Are you launching new features?
So that's actually a very great question. So let's just start with the how many clients. So we have about 1,200 clients at the moment, if I'm not wrong. Our revenue is close to around 8 million, if I'm not wrong, a year. So that's good. Yeah, we have a decent cash flow and a very healthy company at the moment. We're still growing rapidly. We hope to either raise funding so that we can start scaling even faster and bring real talent in-house. But at the same time, this is something me and my business partner this is the first time that we reached that level. So we are thinking, either we do it ourselves. We keep asking ourselves, do we need the cash? If we don't need the cash, then do we need to raise funds? I think that's a question we are exploring right now. Because the key here, I realize, is speed. Sooner or later, someone will come along and beat us, or fight with us, or join us, right? So rather than waiting for that next guy who has more budget, more expertise, more experience beating us in our game, raising funding would be a very good choice to speed the whole development up. So when the one thing I learned is when you raise funding, saving money is no longer a key indicator or a key process anymore. When they invest in you, they want you to spend all, hiring the right person as fast as possible, spend as much money as possible, spend as much money and scale up as fast as possible. That is good when you're so that making sure that you are ahead of the game, so that when someone comes and compete with you, they are far way behind. That's something that we are thinking about. Maybe it's time to raise, not for the sake of money, but rather than for the sake of speed.
Yeah, good point. Cool. I think I'm going to try and summarize some of the key points that I learned, and then we can probably wrap it up. So the first takeaway I heard is really don't cheap out on finding a good technical consultant to help you understand how to get started. The other one is when it comes to finding a developer to work with, price is not everything. So don't just go for the cheapest. Make sure that you actually look at reviews, make sure that they really understand what you're doing. In terms of the process, work with a designer first before jumping to developers. Really understand what's the flow, how are things going to be, what your app or software needs to do before you can actually pass the entire vision off to a developer to help them really understand what they need to code or build. And then another one would be as it comes to launching, try to launch with the minimum viable product. What is the simplest version that you can actually start to profit off on, that you can start to sell, that people can actually get a good experience of your product or service. And then from there, you can start to build on top of that. And then I also heard try to be modular. So instead of building everything on the main base, try to have different segments so that when you do updates, when you roll out new features, you don't have to basically refresh your entire code base. Am I missing anything? Do you have anything else you want to add?
Nope. I think you covered everything. That's good.
Great.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's been a very insightful and interesting episode. So thanks for sharing.
No problem. Thank you so much for hosting me.